Organizations everywhere need a way to efficiently organize and manage their users. This is typically the role of one or more teams within an organization as they take on the responsibilities of creating, deleting, and managing users within an organization. AWS IAM provides a lot of tools that makes it a little bit easier for them. And we're going to explore users, groups, and policies here in just a few moments. I recommend that you go ahead and get logged into that AWS account that you had and just go ahead and follow along. But let's go ahead and get right into it. As noted, these organizations typically have different teams structured to do different responsibilities. Account creation is not the only thing that's needed in organizations. There may be a team that's responsible for managing the database, and there may be another team that's responsible for securing the S3 buckets, some of the websites, things that are there, and ensuring that the policies don't allow too much permissions or access to those buckets that may be publicly facing. Another team may be the network team that's responsible for managing and creating the subnets, routes that go across the transit gateway, and maybe allocating IP addresses to other teams. Each of these teams, or these groups that we should say, need to have only those specific permissions that they require using a concept known as the least privilege. We just read about Deloitte and what happened back in 2017 by having that account that had access to the entire network. And that's what we want to do away with by creating those groups and only applying the least privilege permissions. So in this hands-on lab, we're actually going to hop into the console and demonstrate creating the groups. As you can see here, we've got 4 groups: the cloud admin, the database admin, the server admin, and the network admin. Each of these groups will have one-to-many users that of course receive those permissions that are granted within the policy to allow them to access resources inside of AWS. We'll take a look at creating these groups and of course tying the users to them, and then of course attaching the policies to those groups, and then of course we'll see what that gives us. So let's go ahead and get logged into the console. All right, here we go. Once you're logged into the AWS console from your home page, if you've already visited that section, again, this widget here is going to show some of the most recently visited services. But if you've not been there yet, then go ahead and click on services. You can either scroll down to security, identity, and compliance, or go ahead and type in IAM. And then this will bring up the page that we need to go ahead and get to. Most, if not all, of the items that are really tied for the day-to-day responsibilities of anyone that's configuring IAM are hosted right here on this page. The root user has MFA. We did that in the last module, in the hands-on lab there. But again, it's great policy and good practice to go ahead and enforce that for all users, not just privileged users such as the root user. And we're going to talk about that in the next lesson as well. But here on the left-hand side, underneath access management, you see the user groups, the users, and the roles. Now, this is kind of a chicken or an egg type of scenario, as there's nothing really wrong with creating the users before you create the groups, or vice versa. But in our example, we're going to go ahead and create the groups first. So let's go ahead and click on user groups. As you can see here, there's a create group button right here. And so let's go ahead and click on that as we have no groups that are created. We need to give that user group a name. And again, we're going to go ahead and follow those 4 group names that we had earlier. We're going to create them right now, starting with the cloud admin. If we had created the users first, this is where we could add them during this step right here to reduce one of the steps. We'll come back here to attach the permissions and policies, but as you can see, 785 as of today different managed policies that can be attached. And of course, the option to create your very own policy. But we will do this in the very next step. But for now, let's just go ahead and create those 4 groups without doing anything else. So if you're logged in and you've already typed in the name of Cloud Admin, go ahead and click Create Group. That's going to be our very first group that we've created. Again, there are no users that are tied to this group just yet, and the permissions have not yet been defined. But let's go ahead and repeat this step 3 more times. Again, our next group is Database Admin. Again, if you're following along with me, I appreciate that. Let's see what we got here. But if not, like I said, definitely can come back and watch this video and try it on your own. And like we noted, IAM is free, so feel free to practice looking and playing around with the policies here, but try not to create any resources outside of the bootcamp so that we can not be charged. Our 4th group, Network Admin, is the last one there. And once we hit Create Group, then we have our 4 groups created. So we see here there are no users tied to these groups again, and no permissions. But let's go ahead and talk about permissions that are here. Again, the permissions come from the policy. So let's think about what a cloud administrator may need. In our theoretical or hypothetical, I should say, organization, our cloud admin is going to be able to basically have full administrator rights. So once we click on cloud admin, let's go ahead and come to the permissions tab. Once we're here to attach a policy that's already managed by AWS, let's click on add permissions and then attach policies. And again, those 785 are still here, but let's go ahead and type in admin and hit enter to search for that. This will filter, of course, those permissions that contain the word admin. And there's 2 pages here, but the one that we need to attach to our cloud admin is going to be administrator access, which provides full access to AWS services and resources. So to do that, go ahead and check this box here and then click add permissions. Once that's done, you can see that now we have 1 permission that's attached to this group. If you're curious at what this permission of administrator access really provides, then JavaScript Object Orientation, or JSON, is what this format is here. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But this, again, the star is pretty much all. The effect is going to be allow or deny. And so this policy allows the users that are part of this group to basically do anything. The actions may be something like get, push, list buckets, things like that, but it can do anything. And the resources are, of course, is it a specific S3 buckets, all S3 buckets, a specific server, all servers? It can basically access any resource. So with this policy, an easier way to visualize that is to go ahead and click on this link here, but we've done that in a new tab. And once this opens up, it's going to display kind of easier to understand for some instead of that JSON format there. We're going to see listed here out of those, was it 780 plus? I think 785. We're going to see those listed here. So 340 out of 340 services. It's basically, again, allowing administrators to do that here. So let's now go back to our groups again. We've attached the policy to our very first group, the cloud admin. So we need to now find and think about what access the other 3 need. Again, these will be specific and given to you by your organization, so you don't have to think about it, but now we're just putting our thinking caps on. And let's go ahead and click on the database admin. So the database administrator, let's say that they need full access to one of the most popular databases, which of course is RDS, relational database there. So let's follow the same process. Click on the permissions tab, attach policies, and let's again filter for RDS and hit enter. Again, just one page of results here, but our DBAs or database administrators need full access to that service. So let's go ahead and check that. We'll click add permissions. Again, we'll come back to user groups. We got 2 more remaining. Our network administrators. The primary service that most network administrators stay in and out of is what's called the virtual private cloud, or the VPC. So let's go ahead and type VPC to filter for that. And again, they need to administrator that, so they need full access. But they may also need to see the servers. They may need to see the security groups and things that are listed underneath the EC2. So let's filter for EC2. Oh, apologies. Let's go to attach policies. And then let's search for EC2. And then our server group, our server admins, the very last group we're going to create, is going to be responsible for managing and, launching those. But again, this network admin, they need to be able to see it. So let's not give them full access, but let's give them read-only access. And then again, let's go ahead and hit add permissions. And now this network admin has 2 permission policies for that group. It may be a little bit special if you're a network person. So let's go ahead and click on the very last group, server admin. Let's do the same, click on the permissions tab. And again, you do this enough time, it becomes a little bit easier. Let's go ahead and filter for EC2. And so I encourage you to kind of play around with this a little bit outside of what we're doing here, just to grasp and get that better understanding and familiarity. So now all 4 groups are created. Each of them has a policy attached to provide the permissions. Now all that's left is to create the users and to then associate or tie the 2 together. So to do this, let's go ahead and create a user. Now what I want you to do is, if you recall in our last module, even right now, you're logged in with the root administrator or the super user. That's not best practice, only when you really need it, which is very infrequently once you've created another user. So what I want you to do is think about a username, and let's go ahead and type that. This one I will put for myself, Cloud Admin 1. But I want you to think about a username that you can remember. And for the rest of the bootcamp, this will be the login that you'll use instead of the root account. This user needs, let's go ahead and provide them with console access. This is going to allow them to visually see the console just like this. We'll get into the access key a little bit later, the programmatic way of using the CLI primarily, and of course the APIs. As far as the auto-generated password, you have a choice of creating a strong password here or letting AWS select one. For us, we will select auto-generated password, but I suggest that you go ahead and create your own password that you remember. And then once we have that done, for this one right here, you don't need to change that password at the next sign on. And once that's done, let's go to permissions. Now, because we created those groups, again, we could have did it the reverse way, but let's go ahead and add this account that you're creating right now to the cloud admin group. And for tags, we don't need any tags, but this is where you can search, filter, do billing things for, like perhaps you want a tag to be called department, and this would be, the cloud team or something like that. But for now, let's not put any tags here. Let's review and let's create this user. It's going to give you the choice of downloading this CSV. Again, we don't want to click on show password in case there's anyone around us if we were doing this at work. And we can send an email if this was for other users. But for now, let's download this again to get that password and of course the login URL. So very important. Go ahead and click download there. Let's go ahead and close this. Now we got 3 more users to create. Again, for each of these, We will also go ahead and create them and give them access to the console. So let's go ahead and click add user. Next up, the group is database admin. So again, we will respectively name this user database admin 1. We'll give them that console. We will let AWS auto-generate the password. For a user in a real organization, we would require them to change their password at the next login, but this again is just getting a familiarity, so we're just gonna deselect that. Again, let's add them to the database admin group. No tags, and let's click review, and let's create that user. We'll download the CSV, and then again, we'll repeat this 2 more times. So I'm gonna pause this video, but go ahead and create the remaining 2 users, the server admin and the network admin, and just follow the same naming convention. But just to speed up the video, I'll go ahead and create those 2 users right now. So now we've created 4 different users, and we've tied them or associated them to 4 different groups that have their respective permissions and policies attached to them, so that they can only access the resources that their team and the organization requires. This has really been a leap forward, and we've come a long way in just a short period of time. One last thing before we get away, I created a user group here just to show you, similar to many menus that you'll see across AWS, what happens if you don't want one, or if you errantly created a user or a group. In that case, just go ahead and click on this box here and click delete. And a lot of times you're going to be asked by AWS, just as an extra check to make sure it's not an accident, to go ahead and type the name of the account. You can copy that or type it in. And the same would be when you're ready to delete a server that has protections there, to make sure you're not accidentally terminating it. But that's a high-level overview of how IAM works inside of AWS. Truly do appreciate you rocking in here with me today. And until next time, stay safe, take care of yourselves, peace.